What's up, trade crew? Welcome back to HVAC R&D, hosted by Rhydon Atzenhoffer. The Canadian A-Team trade crew representation continues to grow, and I am pumped up for another member of the A-Team joining the show tonight. So, let's get it, y'all. From the beginning of this show, I've always said that the trades industry is built on great people with great stories, and I want the trade crew to hear yours. Whether you're in the field turning a wrench or running duct, building a trades empire from your office, working the distribution counter, grinding a sales territory, repping or working for a manufacturer, or anywhere in between, HVAC R&D is the show about the power of conversation, collaboration over competition, and sharing real conversations from every corner of the trades community. And if you've got a story to tell, then I've got a microphone ready for you. So when you're ready, go check out the links to the HVAC R&D podcast questionnaire that are on all social media channels and on the website, and get in touch with me about joining an episode of the show. If this is your first time listening, thank you so much for sharing some time with me. If you're coming back show after show, thank you for helping me continue to make this dream of highlighting our trades a reality. Please make sure to smash the like and subscribe buttons on any and all streaming and social platforms where you follow the show, and please share with your friends and trade crew. If you aren't following the show, you can find me on Instagram and TikTok at hvac.rnd, and on LinkedIn, Facebook, and TradeHounds as the HVAC R&D podcast. Please make sure to go check out hvacrnd.com and visit the swag shop for some cool merch and some Cajun Joe's Bayou Spice, and then check out the vendor hub for discounts on BetterHelp, Chirp, Service Titan, and my newest partner, SkillCat. So everybody, tonight's guest is a 15-year commercial refrigeration pro and a passionate voice for the next generation of tradespeople. You know him as Ice Master Ty, but tonight's guest is Ty Smith. He's deeply involved with Skills Canada, loves a good clean pipe fit, a long motorcycle ride, and helping others grow in the trades. So let's dive into his journey, his take on apprenticeships, and why he's an all-in on building a better future for HVACR. So Ty, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. It's been a long time coming, brother.
I appreciate that. Been a long time listener, first time caller.
First time caller. What is this, Crank Yankers? Let's do it. But yeah, so you were fighting with a carrier heat exchanger today, but what else you been up to lately?
Oh, it's been a little slow. Fortunately, we had some family issues that took me away from work for the last month, but I'm always working on my big meat plants with the racks in them, trying to make sure a few of my guys are all sorted with that. It's about a 3-hour drive for me to get to that site, so I'm trying to do a handoff to our new crew out there on that. Other than that, trying to get some sales stuff done and a few little courses to try and see if I can move myself into the office environment, but just carrying on like always.
Well, and like I said, you're a big motorcycle and Jeep life guy. Any road trips or off-road adventures worth sharing recently or coming up?
Oh, I just got back from a family run down to Moab. Definitely recommend it down there. It was nice to break away. There's some pretty incredible scenery and wheeling down there.
You've been spending a little more time with the family with some stuff that's going on. How do you balance, that work, content creation, staying present with the family? How does all that come into play for you?
For me, it starts and ends with family. I'll burn it all down to keep the family happy. I'm not worried about the rest. Work life, I had to make a dramatic change about 4 years ago. My daughter's just over 4.5 now, and I realized that I really wasn't getting a lot of time at home doing all the grocery store work and everything I was doing, so I actually changed to a less demanding company. Took a pay drop just so I could have a little more work time at home to prioritize it. And as far as the content stuff, it's definitely on the back burner behind work and family, in that order.
You've always been kind of heavy commercial. What really attracted you to commercial refrigeration, and is that where you started, or how did you get started, and how did that become your primary focus?
Yeah, I actually started in racks in grocery stores. So This is my third ticket that I have, and my last one was actually fixing RV travel trailers. And one of my wife's friends was a foreman in a refrigeration company. We'd done some projects around his house together, working on cars, things like that. And he felt I'd be a good fit into the company and kind of recruited me into it. So that was where I started. Got really comfortable, familiar with it. I kind of feed off of the stress when it all goes wrong, that you're the one pivot point, and really got a joy out of it, and honestly never really played in the other sides of it. Just found something I was really happy with right off the hop and stuck with it.
I know commercial refrigeration, that's a very on the spot, super demanding. You know, you get the phone call, you got to go, because if you don't go, you know, grocery stores losing product, or meat packing plants losing product anywhere that's doing any kind of heavy refrigeration.
Yeah, the quote I got told when I was coming up was HVAC is a career and refrigeration is a lifestyle.
I can agree with that from what I've seen from guys even down here that do it. I know when my dad started his business in the 70s down here, he did a lot of commercial refrigeration. But as you know, once I was born and he was really having to get into, you know, more family time and growing his business, he kind of had to step away from a lot of that stuff and focus more on residential retrofit. You know, he did a lot of commercial retrofit and service, but that refrigeration side of things got more and more difficult to deal with, you know, a little youngster around, kind of like you were talking as well.
Yeah.
So for me, I didn't really grow up playing in a bunch of that. Most all of my experience, as we were talking before the show, was really, you know, residential, light commercial stuff. So racks and all heavy refrigeration, I never really even got my feet wet in some of that stuff. I've sold a little bit of it, but it was just never something I got a chance to get into. And watching guys like yourself and everybody else that gets into it, it's always fascinating just kind of watching the different things that you diagnose and fix on the fly. It's nuts.
It's one of the few places I think that you still got to do it without a dedicated manual. Like sometimes you get a wiring diagram for a rack and that's about it. You still have to know all your procedures and how everything's going to run through the system and why this component does that to the next component. And it's quite the learning curve to get into. That's for sure.
You know, do you think some of it being the joy of the challenge, like you said, you know, you like kind of getting to go in there and be the guy that saves the day. Do you think some of that in a way is what kept you drawn to that as opposed to getting into, you know, day-to-day residential stuff?
Yeah, I bore pretty easy when it comes to a lot of things. I'm definitely an ADD and wired individual. So there was always a lot of challenges and a lot of stimulation coming from it where I've never tried it, so I can't say, but just being a residential guy that was, say, installing on a housing project where you were doing the same install for 2 weeks, it would drive me up the wall, I'm pretty sure.
Track home stuff, that can get monotonous because it's, you know, oh, we just did this house, let's go do it again next door.
Yeah.
I could say that. Now, big custom home stuff, I found a lot of joy in that, especially when you get into these houses. They're 5, 10, 12 systems, and you know, everything is got its own different specific problem you got to figure out how to sort out. I had a show with Keith Flores from HVAC God not too long ago, and we were talking about kind of the same thing. It's a drastic difference when you go from just a, you know, a one system house to this big menagerie of different things you've got to orchestrate and figure out to keep homeowner and GC and everybody happy while still finding a way to make a profit. That always was fun with residential stuff for me. And I've had a good bit of contractors that do some of those larger custom homes, and getting to go into those jobs and kind of see what they're looking at and thinking about how I would have solved it before, and how, you know, what's their plans now? Is there anything I can help add to them, to their plan, to help make things more efficient or help them out? So I think you get that same kind of rush from commercial refrigeration, which hell, I might get the same rush if I'd ever gotten the chance to really do it. But that's where I enjoy the residential part of it, is really getting into solving problems, even at the install level.
Yeah, I think the problem I'd have is trying to work back up from the bottom to that level where you can get that same level of enjoyment from it.
I can see that. At the same time, I mean, I think you'd be fine. I think you'd be just fine.
I'd find a way. I'm certain on that.
So when did you first start kind of getting into the HVACR community online and start really sharing your story there?
kind of started in a goofy way. I was working for a smaller company for a friend of mine, and we were both kind of just managing the company account, posting up things we were doing. And at the same time, I had a Snapchat group with my wife and a couple of our friends about what we were doing at work. And one was a mechanic, and my wife works for a craning company, and another girl works for a trucking company. And they eventually just sat there and like, you're posting more than us. Like, you got to turn it down a little. And I'm like, all right, well, maybe I'll just start throwing some of this stuff on my own HVAC account. And it just kind of evolved from there, just annoying everybody else to put it on my own stuff. And that was probably 2.5 years ago.
Really, I feel like you've been around longer than that.
Well, I started 6-8 months before AHR in Chicago. I was still pretty fresh when I went there.
Okay. Now, for some reason, I felt like, which granted, time is a construct, and it we could go down that rabbit hole.
I could be wrong too. I could be a little further than that, but I'm definitely under like the 4 or 5 year mark.
So yeah, for me, it was I didn't really get into this until starting the show 5 years ago, and that's really kind of when I didn't even really realize there was this community out here that we've all kind of helped build and become a part of. So it's always interesting to figure out how people even got into it or stumbled into it and why.
Oh yeah, I was 12, 13 years in the trade and never thought about really anything other than like forums for problems and stuff as far as the HVAC community till I really started to get into it.
Well, and you think about it, I don't think any of us did. COVID changed a bunch of that for a lot of us. That's kind of how a bunch of us really got into the content sharing side of it. But, before that, like you said, anything, if I was ever looking for it, it was just some kind of, forum or community of anything. And that's where maybe you could go and find stuff. I remember when I first got into distribution and I was trying to find, I'm selling this equipment, but I'm trying to figure out what I'm actually selling it up against. All I've got is this model number from this unit that was built in the 80s, and I'm missing like 2 numbers from it. So where can I go and find a manual to try to figure out what in the hell this is so I can help cross it over to something? And that was really my first introduction into any kind of forum or trying to figure out that there actually was, this huge HVAC community out there that nobody really knew was there. We all knew we existed, but we didn't know we could all actually help one another without us being competitive.
Yeah. I just double checked my phone here, and my first post was in 2022, so it would be 4 years.
Almost 4 years. Yeah, a little bit of time. We're getting there. It'll be 2026 before we freaking know it.
Yeah, I guess you're right, 3 years. Yeah.
Which hey, AHR Vegas. I'll see you there.
You betcha. I missed Orlando because I will be leaving very shortly to fly across the pond, and that's where my travel budget went. But I am definitely going to Vegas.
That's So I'm the first AHR. Well, let me take that back. The first AHR I went to was in 2019. It was the time before 23 that they were in Atlanta, but I was only there for like 2 hours. So to me, that doesn't count. Because it was almost like in 2 hours you get to walk in the door and walk back out. Is about what it feels like. I was supposed to go to the last one in Vegas, but the company I worked for at the time didn't want us to go. And then right on top of it, I got COVID, so then I definitely wasn't going.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to go to the one I should have went to first and to see kind of how it is in Vegas. But from what everybody tells me, it's a good time. Of course, I don't know an AHR that's not a good time.
Yeah, Chicago was my first and only, and it was definitely an eye-opening experience when I got there.
I did like the layout of Chicago. I think it's cool that it's split between the 2 different rooms. So when I was breaking up my days, it was almost like it was broken up for me. It's like, all right, I'm going to be in this side today, and I'm going to be in that side tomorrow.
Yeah, I was slightly annoyed that none of the passes got mailed out because the lineup to get your pass to get in the first day was crazy.
I will say that is the luck of being in the podcast pavilion, is that I could go to the press room and pick up my pass there, and I did not have to stand in that line.
Well, 2 weeks before Orlando, my one for Florida came to the house. I'm like, this isn't fair. The one I'm not going to, I get my pass for.
No. Insult to injury.
100%.
So, but I know you're involved with Skills Canada.
Yeah.
How did that opportunity come about, and what's been your focus there?
The opportunity itself is a very humorous story that doesn't very well reflect where I'm in now as far as skills. But I had a friend of mine who was teaching at the trade college, and they needed some judges, and he basically said, why don't you come up north? So it's about a 3-hour drive north from us is where the competition's held for our provincial, and grab a hotel room. Bunch of us are going to go up, drink during the night, hang out, party. It'll be a fun thing, and then we'll judge during the day. And I thought, this sounds like a great way to burn a couple days. I make good money. Wasn't single, but I didn't have kids at the time, and went up there and did that. And driving home, I was so frustrated at the way it was ran and the way it was judged. Before I completed that 3-hour drive, I told my buddy that I wanted a seat at the table and I wanted to be able to make decisions, and I was going to get involved in this thing. And that would be about 7 years ago. And now I'm the chair for my provincial, and I actually have a spot on the national board as well.
What's up, trade crew? You've heard the buzz, you've seen the press gang at every single AHR. Contractors across the country are ditching their torches for RLS press fittings, and they're not looking back. Why? Because RLS lets you finish faster, safer, and cleaner. From rooftops to mechanical rooms, crawl spaces, and attics, it's a press and go solution that's leak tested, UL recognized, and proudly made in America. Make the switch to RLS and take the heat out of your installs, literally. RLS, rapid locking system, press forward and press on. So tell me, for people that don't know kind of how that competition works, can you kind of explain everything that goes into that and how it's managed and taken care of and what someone would expect if they were to get involved?
So as far as the contestants, it is a 2-day competition. On our provincial level, we keep it pretty consistent. They build a small under-counter we do a freezer. So you have to do the piping, the wiring, the box is already pre-made. Then you have to charge it, commission it, all while keeping within rigid procedures and safety procedures. There's a rotating set of between 6 to 10 judges that are looking over 6 contestants to kind of see if they're making any mistakes. And then at the end of the project, we spend probably about 30 minutes and completely rip these things apart. Nice. So we're looking at how well you did your brazing, how good your flares are, is your insulation clean, are your pipes level. It's a competition that I could definitely complete, but I doubt I could win. The standard that we hold these kids to is pretty high. They're all under 21-year-old apprentices. So for us, that's usually getting into about the 3rd year of their 4-year program.
Gotcha.
And then on our side, I'm starting to try and reach out to some more manufacturers and suppliers to try and get some assistance on that side. But there's the logistics of setting everything up, working with the 2 trade colleges in my area to see how many competitors they have and what they need to bring those guys forward. And this year I reached out to a bunch of manufacturers, and I've got goodie bags for all the competitors. So they'll get, a couple shirts, couple hats, some tools, some products from different companies. So it'll be a nice little takeaway for them for taking 2 days off work to come and compete for this.
Nice. Well, let's talk training and next generation and some trade talk. So, I'll start first with, I know along your way, I'm sure you've had, mentors and moments that have really kind of helped shape the way that you understand how to train and guide tech. So give me a story from a mentor that's really helped change how you want to look forward as you go about training this next generation and getting involved with it.
Probably the guy who got me into the trade is one of the bigger influencers I have in this trade. He was 100% about the guys that he worked with, and you could call him at 2:00 in the morning, and if he couldn't figure it out on the phone, you'd hear the boots be put on. There was no question too dumb. He'd leave you hanging on the phone tons. If he asked you for a number and you didn't have it, he would just not reply and just wait for you to go get it.
Love it.
Um, and I think that there was a level of fear and mutual respect that you had to have the most information you had before you could call him, that I've definitely held my guys to, that, I'll hang up on a guy if he calls me and he doesn't even have his gauges out of his truck yet. You're not ready to talk to me.
No, you're not.
And they'll know they can call me back. They just got that dad disappointment that, I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed in you. Most of the journeymans I worked with were really good. A lot of them were supportive, but they were willing to let you fail. They were, the type of guys that'll let you put the knife in the electrical outlet, right?
Yep. Because they know from experience that the best lesson is you got to screw it up yourself.
Yeah.
Because then you really value understanding how to unscrew it up.
100%. But if you ask them point blank, should I do this? They'll tell you no. And here's why. So I've had several, no major moments, just continuous respect and support from the journeyman to the apprentice. And it's something that I've always carried through, that everybody on the site has a good idea every once in a while. You can't write anybody off just because the position they are in the company, and guys don't want to be yelled at. They just want feedback.
Well, and like you said, you're passionate about figuring out how to help this next generation. And, that led you to push for, more say in how skills was ran. When it comes to getting the next generation into the trade, what do you think are some things that are working, and what do you think are some things that need to change?
In my opinion, the biggest thing that needs to change doesn't actually have anything to do with the next generation that's coming up. It's actually the generation that's already here. It's parents' expectations of where kids need to be. Yeah. I was really lucky. I grew up in a family of highly educated tradesmen. My dad actually is an electrician and an instrument tech, certified in Canada as well as England. And then he spent 35 years teaching at the post-secondary trade school. His attitude towards everything was, you got to trade before you went to college. You needed to have something to fall back on if college didn't work. It wasn't the first plan. College was the second plan. And you hear a lot of kids that go to colleges and universities and take these large debts, and they come out and they have something that they can't use. And I think really we need to convince parents that there is absolutely nothing wrong with getting in the trades. It's a wonderful way to make a living. A lot of guys are very, very passionate about it. And it's a perfectly fine way to make your living.
Are you sure we didn't have the same dad and we don't know about it?
I hope not.
So Cajun Joe, my father, he went in the Navy when he was 16, and then he was working in the boiler room on the Midway. That ages him a little bit. He'll be 84 in 10 days. And when he was done in the Navy, he was a master marine instrumentation tech and a pipe fitter in a shipyard for 10 years. So some of that same kind of background. And then he moved to, he was on an oil rig for a year and a half. And then he went into chemical maintenance and plant turnarounds. And he was an assistant maintenance supervisor for a major chemical company. And he flew all across the country developing, how they did all of their plant turnarounds and their maintenance for everything that was electrical, plumbing, mechanical. He developed, all of their systems for how they set up maintenance shops. And, you're going to have one compressor on the rack. You're going to have one that's in service. You got another one that's in rebuild, and he'd have 6 in this plant or 4 in this one, whatever it depended for the different things. He went from this huge background to then he moves to the mountains of North Carolina and he starts residential, commercial service and refrigeration business. I was raised with that mindset of, you don't get an allowance, you get a paycheck. You're going to learn a trade no matter what. And then my mother's side were, steeped in academia. They have doctors and pharmacists and everything else. So I had 2 different sides of the coin. I have one side that was, you're going to get a 4-year degree because that's what was beat into, that generation. But then I've got my dad who said, well, you're going to learn that, but you're going to have a trade to fall back on too. And luckily, I was able to combine both of those things. So I got a 4-year degree, but I paid for it working in a trade so that I didn't
Yeah.
have debt. So I completely agree that, I was lucky enough to be able to understand both sides of it. But most kids today, they're driven one way or another, and they make it to where it seems like, if you're going to turn a wrench or you're going to work in a trade or use your hands, they still get looked down on to this day. No matter what happens, it gets looked down, and it shouldn't be that way. And I think there's a lot of misconception. I had a conversation about this earlier today with someone else that, these kids let's say they go to a trade school and they're going to learn HVAC or electrical or plumbing, and they're going to come out after this 2-year program and they know all this. But even in that trade program, there's a massive misunderstanding and misconception of what they can do with their career, because they think the only option they ever have from that class is to go and turn a wrench. And that's not the case either,
Yeah.
because you can learn all those things, and 5-10 years down the road, maybe you don't want to be a contractor anymore. Maybe you want to work and do something different. Well, you can move into distribution. Those trades translate to the support system that supports those trades. But no one
Yeah.
ever talks about those jobs being out there as an option. When I was doing the AHR workforce development donation before Chicago, when I was up there in October of 23, and we were meeting with all these kids at the local high school at Prosser Career Academy. We were asking kids in the school, kids that were in the program, like, well, what do you want to do when you grow up? And they're like, well, I want to do marketing. I'm like, well, great. You can learn this trade and you can go be a marketing expert for the trades at a major manufacturer. So
Yep.
you can still go do those things you want to do. You just can go do them now with a different perspective. The problem is they don't teach kids they can do that too.
No, and I don't think a lot of them. So our apprenticeship system's definitely different than the way you guys run it in the U.S. But a lot of the parents don't realize how lucrative this can be early, and these kids can be really smart.
No, they
So
don't.
our guys, I'd have to check the union rate right now, but they're probably in the high 20s to maybe $30 an hour for their first year. So you're making double minimum wage straight out of high school. One of my old apprentices at a previous company who now he's a J-man, but he was 24 when he bought his first house. He lived in the basement and his two friends rented the upstairs and they paid the mortgage. He was living mortgage free in a basement suite of a house he owned at 25.
Well, and speaking of financial things like that, I truly think there should be a financial class that every kid should have to go through in
100%.
before they get out of high school or anything else too, because once you actually understand how to budget and how to use your money, you can be much more successful, especially if you do something like the trades coming out of high school.
If I had that much money in high school, it would be gone for sure. I was listening to Dennis the Apprentice's podcast, and he was saying that his company, they actually mandate their guys go through some sort of financial training because they're paying them so highly at such a young age.
Yeah, because you don't know what to do with it. You're just like, ooh, toys. Let's go buy cool shit.
I need a boat this week.
Yeah, it takes you a while to learn that BOAT stands for break out another 1,000. It's a whole different ballgame. And
Yeah.
and really, you talk about American apprenticeships. I hate to say it, but I really never had much of an experience of really seeing a true apprentice program here. Now, there may be other states that have it, but I've never really seen a true apprentice program, at least in North Carolina. Now, I've worked with some major, large residential contractors that they hire green, and then they have an 8-week training program that they put people through themselves. They have their own training lab, their own instructors, everything, and they build their own techs. That's how they do it.
Yeah, it's just so crazy to me.
But you can't do that. You can't do that in a lot of places. It's not the same here. Here, it's in a lot of cases you're getting thrown in a van and figure it out.
Yeah, ours is 4 years. 10 months out of the year, you're on the tools. 2 months, you're in trade school. It's a governing body, a government body that regulates it. And then that would certify you for the province, the same as being certified for the state. And then we write a final exam that is any question on any piece of equipment that could be in Canada. So there's a group of Canada-wide journeymen that build this test. And if you pass that, you get your Red Seal certification. And you can basically walk into any shop in Canada and be paid the top wages that go in that area because you are a fully certified technician anywhere in Canada.
I feel like in some ways they tried to do something like that when they added HVAC to NATE certification. I know NATE certification was a major thing in the automotive industry for a long time, but I don't really feel like that ever accomplished what they intended it to, mainly just for the sheer fact that there was never really something put in place nationwide or even statewide to really build a program like that to help, one, guarantee that you've got good quality people that are being trained to actually go and do the things they're going to go do.
Yeah. We're fairly heavily subsidized. So 2 months worth of trade school for an apprentice, I think the last time I heard there's right around $800 to cover everything other than your books. And then most companies, when you pass, will pay you that back.
Yeah.
They just got rid of the program, but there was a program that for every year of completion, you got $1,000 check from the government.
That's a nice little incentive.
Yeah. So there's definitely a lot of government involvement to get guys through that, but it also regulates who can and can't go onto certain jobs. So other than your basic residential companies, you don't really find, chuck in a truck type operations up here as much.
Obviously, we already said that a lot of times, companies will help reimburse techs as they're training, but what are some other things that you believe could better support, techs that are just starting out, for you, especially guys that are starting out in refrigeration? Having grown up in a family HVAC business, I know firsthand what it is like to have hired someone that you had to train for weeks just to get them up to speed. But what if they came trained, certified, and ready to work on day one? That's what Apprentice Now is all about, providing contractors and businesses with employees that are trained first so that you can hire right. If you want to know more about what Apprentice Now can do to help you and your HVAC business hire quality new technicians and installers, visit HVACR&D.com, check out the vendor hub, and click the Apprentice Now link to get started today.
Mentor programs are a big thing, making sure that they know who they can contact and when, because I've seen a lot of guys scared to call out that just get into a fear loop in their heads and never really come back and able to diagnose things. I really like when companies have tool programs where apprentices can purchase tools that often can cost them a fair bit of money. So you can get a start and you're not really hung up because of a lack of tools.
That's something I believe in very heavily too. I always had to buy my own tools. That was something that, that my dad was very adamant about with, anyone that worked for him, to a point that, if there were certain, higher end tools that he would make sure, the company had, but your basic stuff, he's like, you guys need to own your own tools. And he's, if you want to buy your own tools, he's like, I'll buy them for you and you can pay me back for them, but I want to make sure that you have the tools you need to do the job. So, even the small company we worked with our guys to make sure they could have their basic tools, and we would help subsidize them getting that, because we didn't want them to go out in the field and not have the things that they needed, even for the most basic of things.
Our company that I work for now, they pay per month into a tool account, and that can be, you can actually run that as a credit. So guys that start, they can sort of put $1,000, maybe $1,500 into their tools and give them the opportunity to actually have something when they hit the ground running, so they're not just working out of their journeyman's tool bag, right?
With everything, the way stuff's changing right now, what tools and technologies are you seeing really make the biggest impact with apprentices and new hires right now? Like, if you had to say, these are 5 things we're going to make sure that, we get for you that you can pay us back for out of the chute, what would those be?
I think you need your hand tools. A standard set of gauges is pretty easy thing to say. I don't think that you need to buy a set of digitals. I will say there are certain companies now that are making sort of a cool factor in their tools that are driving
I
guys
agree
to
with
have a lot
that.
of stuff. I think, to me, there seems to be a lot higher quality at a lot cheaper price than I started.
Agree with that too.
So what I always told guys is you need a basic set of hand tools. So some crescent wrenches, screwdrivers, maybe a pipe wrench, wire skinners, wire cutters, a drill, um, an impact driver, a basic set of gauges, all your PPE. And then as we work together, see what you're using out of my bag. Because I used to joke I have a 3-time policy. After three times, it's time for you to buy your own.
I like it.
Because I hate it when a guy goes out and buys a $2,000 drill set and then doesn't have a set of screwdrivers because he's in debt. You got to look at where you're at and which companies you're doing and what you're going to need to do your job. Don't go buy a bunch of refrigeration stuff if you're going to be doing mostly tin work and not show up with a hammer, right?
You talk about mentorship, but what do you think is the best way that experienced techs can pass on knowledge without it overwhelming a younger crew member?
As long as it's safe, make them do it and make them struggle.
Because the fortune is in the struggle.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I do a fair bit with like an Emerson E2 controller on the rack, and I can lock that so you can't change any settings. But I can make you go and find me a sensor and tell me what it did 2 days ago. And then I just walk away, and when they're done, they'll come and see me, Hey, we're going to do this one. You're going to keep doing it, and I'm going to yell if you're going to do something safe. So here, put the gauges on. Does that seem safe, right? If you just straight out there, hey, you look over my shoulder, hold the flashlight like our dads did when we were working on cars with them and stuff, they're not going to take as much away from you.
No, you're not. And I think in some ways that was where I missed some of the service stuff, because even when I was younger, there were days where we just had to go and knock them out. So I became, the guy holding the flashlight, or the guy,
Yeah.
I was the gopher. I didn't get as much time as I would have wanted to really start to understand diagnosis and different stuff at a much younger age than I eventually learned it. Because, small business, time is money. So I watched way more than I got to do at times, which, looking back now, I understand it now. I didn't understand it then. I was just like, man, this is an easy job. I stand here and hold a flashlight all day. This is great. And I get paid at the end of the week, And that's to never say that it was a disservice the way, I came through into the industry. That's not what I mean by it at all. I think it's just sometimes if you have the opportunity to let them do it more, as you said, that's where they learn the most.
Yeah.
And that's where you're going to see the most growth over an early set of time for these young apprentices.
The other thing I do is I try not to have them get too overwhelmed by what's going on. So at the beginning of the day, or when I first meet a guy, I'll tell him that, hey, there's going to be a lot coming at you today. And if you remember 10% of this tomorrow, I'll be happy. You don't need to remember everything I'm saying. This isn't on a test. And then just go. And then they are a little more relaxed, because you walk into some of these big mechanical rooms for the first time and you can barely tell which pipe's connected to which pipe, right?
Oh, that's the dang truth. I remember the first time I ever went into like a major boiler room or a major chiller room, and I was like, oh, holy shit. I had no clue what was going on in there. And I was like, how am I ever supposed to understand all this? It's massively overwhelming.
Yeah. One of the first compressor rooms I walked into was for a food warehouse here. It was an industrial compressor room. It had 9 Micom screws, and it kept most of a city block below freezing temperatures.
Jeez.
And I just went, what is this?
It's like, I got to work out of this. How? Where do you start?
Exactly.
It's like with number 1, and you work your way down to number 9.
Yeah, that's what I started to do. Okay, so the pipe leaves the compressor, and then where does it go? Follow that pipe.
Yep. If you could redesign the apprentice process from scratch, what's something you'd change? Since 1961, JP Lamborn Company has been the name behind some of the best flexible duct products in the business. A third-generation family-owned company that built its legacy on integrity, innovation, and service. That same spirit drives them today, with antimicrobial technology, top-tier materials, and a relentless focus on quality. When contractors need a product they can stand behind, JPL delivers. It's more than just flex duct, it's peace of mind. JPL, the name you know, the quality you trust, and the flex that delivers.
For us up here, the amount of time you spend in school in one block. I really like the European, specifically the British style, where your company works you for 4 days and sends you to trade school for 1. So you get little bits of knowledge that you can apply every week as you learn them.
Okay, that makes sense. I can understand that because, like you said, you're 10 months on the tools and 2 months in a classroom.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, that makes perfect sense because in some ways you go out and you get to see it for a little bit, and like you said, you come back and now you can. Oh yeah, I just saw that this week. It's fresher in your mind. I guess if that makes sense, you're fresher in your mind from field to classroom.
Yeah, because what you learned, 6 weeks ago might not be as fresh into your head as what you're applied to now.
Yep.
It's in there enough that you have to go look for it, but it's not as prevalent as it once was.
What's a day one skill that you think every apprentice should walk in knowing or be ready to learn, like off the bat?
Listen and be humble. There's no set skill. I've seen kids that don't know which end of the screwdriver to use become very good journeymen. But communication skills, learning to work with other people, learning to listen, to not. There's a certain point in the apprenticeship where guys start to really make connections, and then they become a pain to teach because they're questioning you and doing things of that nature. But I think the biggest thing if you're walking in day one is, listen, communicate well, pay attention to what's going on around you.
Well, I think that comes back to, soft skills. I've had a lot of conversations about that stuff with people lately too, about, just helping this next generation be good at one-on-one communication again, because we've, now we live on our phone. We don't live in the real world anymore a lot of times. So you forget how to interact and listen and learn from someone that's right in front of you.
Yeah, 100%.
What's something about refrigeration that more people in the trades should understand or respect?
I can't fix your fridge in the house. But that's just everyone in general.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, 'cause speaking of that, the day before AHR Orlando, my wife and I lost our fridge.
Ooh.
I was like, great. Luckily, I had just bought 4 months before that, I had bought a future beer fridge for the garage that was still in the box. So luckily, we had set that thing up the week before, and there was enough room in it that we could move everything into the beer fridge and not lose everything we had when we went to Florida. But yeah, that was an absolute pain in the rear end.
That it would be. That's bad timing for sure.
Yeah, terrible timing. Well, yeah, let's talk a little bit community and collaboration and giving back. How is being part of this online community that we've all become part of changed your perspective on the trade?
It's definitely humbled me, thinking that I had a knowledge of what went on, because I know very little about residential, but I was ignorant to think that there wasn't much to know. And then you start looking at all of the heat pumps and these guys that do hydronics and the quality of their installs and stuff. It really opened me up to what people outside of the small section of the trade that I work in are actually doing. And it definitely humbled me in that part.
And see, I think I had, the exact opposite. I got to really see more of the hands-on stuff for the commercial side that I had never gotten to see before. So I feel the same way, but in reverse in a lot of ways, because it really let me see other things that I hadn't got to run into at the time when I first really got into this.
Yeah, and it's definitely... our trade is very much an isolating trade that you spend a lot of time working with yourself for a very small group of individuals.
Yep.
So it's neat to take in knowledge that other people are putting in, or share in unusual knowledge that you have. And, even if it's just over DMs, to be able to have communication with people who are in a very like minded position, that they're proud, they want to show off their work, they want to show off what they do.
What's been, or what is the most rewarding part for you for helping others, whether it's through Skills Canada or even through your own content?
I think the awareness of what I do is one of the rewarding things. I think as far as skills and apprentices, the most rewarding thing is getting calls from those guys when they start training guys, that they understand how systems work, they understand how to train because I trained them, and things of that nature.
I get that. I get that completely, because you get to see the fruits of your labor helping other people have the
And
same feeling that you got out of it.
and the joy it brings them when they figure out systems and they understand it. There's a certain point, I think, in this trade where things just start to click for people. And when that
Yeah,
click happens, it's not an overnight thing, but it's inside of 30 days. And everybody seems to go through it. When guys sit there frustrated, and you keep telling them, one day it'll click, calm down, one day it'll click. And then you get a call from them, they're being like, hey, I understand why this does this, does this, does this. You were right. Like, this is awesome. Now I know what's going on. And they got a whole new joy for the trade.
it's even the same way in distribution when I get to see guys start to understand a new product and they're like, oh, this is great. I wish I'd done this for years. And then it's it's always cool to kind of see the light bulbs go on. That's always one of the funnest parts about it. And I think that's also the fun part of getting to go and be involved with high schools and with trade programs. When I get the opportunity to do that, is getting to kind of shed light on what we do, and seeing them go, oh well, I never realized it. That's something that the HVAC guy even did.
Yeah.
Um, so you get to see them start to understand what goes into what we do on a day to day basis, and see that come through in them. What's what's a way as a trade community that you think all of us could do a better job of uplifting and supporting one another, especially from across borders as well?
It doesn't seem bad on a lot of the social media now, but I kind of see it coming a little bit. Is constructive criticism is one thing, cutting down somebody else's work or ideas is a whole different thing. And I
Yep.
think the big thing that we can do with the community that is going on right now, especially on social media, is everybody work very hard to keep it positive and try not to let this go dark, because if it starts getting dark and petty, it'll go fast.
And now I'll be honest, that's one of the reasons why I got away from a lot of the Facebook group stuff, because I felt like Facebook went dark
Yeah,
really bad.
the forums did too
And it's like,
back in the
man,
day, because I'm now dating myself how old I am.
we ain't that old. Um,
Tell
we're
that
only
to
as
my
young
knee.
as we're
Tell me
only
that.
as young as we feel,
Tell that to my knees when I stand up.
right? But no, I agree, and I think one of the most important things we can give back to this community is supporting one another. And there's plenty of times where I've seen an install that I'm like, I would have done that a little bit different. But you can always shoot a guy a message, be like, hey, I thought about this. Have you ever tried it that way? You
Yeah, it's
don't
a
have
different
to.
thing on private messenger than
Yeah,
plastered it on their wall, for sure.
it's like, yeah, that ductwork looks like shit. I was like, well, thanks, man, appreciate it.
Not constructive, just
No,
criticism.
it's like not constructive. Um, so if someone that's listening here, wants to really start giving back, where do you think's a good place for them to begin?
I think it goes back to getting people into the trade and keeping things positive. If it's as little as checking with your in-house apprentices, buy them lunch, buy them a beer, hey, what are you struggling with? How can I help you off the clock, right? Do you need help with welding? Okay, well, we can come in on Saturday and we'll practice some welds together and get you past this point. If you've got a career day at your kids' junior high or high school, go in with some cool tools and kind of try and impress the kids to show them what we do and what we can do, so we can get more involvement. But I guess mostly just keep everything positive, keep it happy. Nobody likes working with that guy that's just always cranky.
No, you've got to keep it positive and keep it enjoyable. And speaking of positive and enjoyable things, since you are a longtime listener, I know you appreciate the old school crawl space confession. So I have to ask, what's a good crawl space confession that you can lay out for everybody to either get a good laugh or get a good lesson from?
Oh, now you put me on the spot.
You've been on the spot for like 50 minutes now, man. You should be ready.
I know. I wasn't really looking to be confessing a bunch of stuff.
What's the absolute just worst rack system headache you've ever walked in on? Like just absolute crap show.
Well, the most amount of drama system I've ever had was the power transformer for the city blew a leg and took a full city block out. And I had 3 racks that completely went down, and they had to call in every single staff member and pull every single piece of product out of a grocery store within 4 hours.
Phew.
That was probably the most drama. Funniest would be I walked into a room that I've been doing a maintenance on all day, and suddenly it had developed a leak on one of the vapor lines, and I couldn't find out where it was. But I'd happened to see one of the meat cutters darting out of the room just before I walked in, so I went and grabbed him and asked him what he was doing, and he told me he ran in there to have a smoke and had lent on a line.
Oh, jeez.
So he was able to point to the fitting he broke and then tried to put back in place so no one would notice.
Jeez.
I had one site that was probably that it was an old school idea where they used to run soft copper in trenches underneath the grocery stores. Now everything pretty much runs overhead where I am. And it was a 4-foot tall, 250-foot tunnel that was a combination of pipe run and drain system.
Oh, jeez.
So that was always a super fun place to do any sort of repairs.
Oh, I'm sure.
And at the time, my journeyman was claustrophobic, so I was a second-year apprentice that had to do all the work in there because he wouldn't go in.
Even better.
Yeah.
Now, were you like having to run back out like, it's doing this? Okay, run back in. It's doing this now. Run back in.
Would it be like leak checking or maybe doing a weld repair or resecuring pipes or something like that?
Well, brother, I really appreciate you taking some time to speak with me and the trade crew. Everybody can find you at Icemaster_Ty on Instagram. I know you've also got a YouTube channel. I didn't even realize that. I was watching your 2024 year in review earlier today.
Yeah, they're not good videos. I'm just trying to learn that video editing thing.
Yeah, you and me both. Is there anywhere else people can find and connect with you if they want to get in touch?
I am on Facebook. I don't do a ton with it, and I am just starting a TikTok one, trying to figure out where that goes. If you want to keep it professional, I am just Ty Smith on LinkedIn, but those are the main places you can find me.
Well, brother, I really appreciate your time.
I appreciate you.
Everybody, if you're not following HVAC R&D online, please go find me on Instagram and TikTok at hvac.R&D. You can also find me on LinkedIn, Trade Hounds, and Facebook as the HVAC R&D podcast. Make sure to follow also the newest R&D bonus show with one of Ty's fellow Canadians, Miss Rachel Pleen, and I started the HVAC Zoomies, which you can find on Instagram at HVAC Zoomies. And stay tuned for more bonus episodes of that show where she and I talk HVAC news real fast so we can talk about Formula One cars that go real fast. Thank you for listening to the show on your favorite platform, whatever it may be. Please smash the like or subscribe button. Follow the show. Please like and rate the show. Leave me a review. Constructive criticism, please. I will respond. And please share the show with your trade crew. Go check out HVACRnd.com and visit the vendor hub and the swag shop. If you want to work with me or join the show, click on the link in the podcast questionnaire in the episode description or on social media, or reach out to me and we'll find a way to get some time together. So everybody, have a great week, trade crew, and I'll catch you soon.